Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of the syndicated talk show, People of Distinction. The talk that gives you an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, alcoleenterprises.com for more info. Email me directly through Benji at alcoleenterprises.com if you'd like to get involved with what we have going. And as always, please continue to like and follow our broadcast. People of Distinction is an internationally syndicated show solely due to the love and support that you all continue to show. We're available across all major podcast distributors, and like I mentioned, people, if you keep following, we're going to continue to put out the content. Now sit back and strap in because we are delighted to showcase this next guest on our network. And on the line with us today, we have the impressive Kim Francisco. And we're discussing his amazing book, Flying Fisheries, Biologist, Flying Experiences of an Alaskan Fisheries Biologist. It's Amazon, it's Barnes & Noble. Most importantly, check out his personal website, kimfrancisco.online. There, you're going to gather more information on him, on this book. He has 2 other titles as well you're going to want to check out. Man, I'm telling you, a one-stop shop for it all. That's kimfrancisco.online. And listen, people, it is an absolute pleasure to have Kim here on the line. Man, listen, we spend so much of life looking straight ahead at the next task, the next deadline, the next destination. But what happens when your job requires you to look down? Okay, well, for decades, our guest today, man, he saw Alaska from a perspective that most of us never will. Low and slow, tracing rivers, watching salmon return year after year. In his memoir, Flying Fisheries, it's about those years in the sky. I mean, it's also about something deeper, right? The quiet wisdom that comes from observing cycles of life from above it. And today we're exploring how the way we look at the world shapes the way we live in it. This is going to be an interesting conversation and surprisingly deep. Sit back and strap in. Man, here we go. Kim, first and foremost, welcome to the network and thank you very much for being a guest. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm very well today. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, listen, it is a pleasure to have you here. As I mentioned to you earlier on the pre-screening call, your book is very unique, man. It's going to be an education for so many of us, myself included, right? I mean, listen, as someone that has not had the opportunity to visit Alaska, I know nothing about fisheries, and I also know nothing about biology. Okay, my wife is a physician. I was not a science person myself, okay? So this is going to be a wonderful insight into a world that many people are unfamiliar with, okay? So we're looking forward to the discussion here with you today. Before we jump into it, start by telling us a little bit more about yourself and your background, Kim.
Well, I was born in Des Moines, Iowa. I had gained the rather unusual, I guess, for a man, name of Kim because my father wanted to name me Kim and my mother wanted to name me after my father, Richard. And Mom thought she wanted the hospital because she filled out the birth certificate and used Kim as my middle name. But my father called me Kim all my life, so after his favorite novel by Rudyard Kipling. So I guess I have a long connection to literary achievements. I grew up and graduated and everything from high school in Des Moines, Iowa, and then I had listened to my father's stories. He was stationed in Alaska during World War II, and I listened to his stories of Alaska, and finally decided to be a wildlife biologist, so I went to the University of Alaska in Fairbanks and majored in wildlife biology. while there, the commercial fisheries division hires a number of seasonal employees every summer.
Mm-hmm.
And I got hired on doing that and became a fisheries biologist instead of wildlife. That's where the money was. And so I spent 21 years with the Alaska Department of Fish and Game. We had a 20-year retirement because, as we're about to discuss with Flying Fisheries biologist, we had a bad habit of getting killed on the job in airplane accidents. And so the legislature decided that we deserved a 20-year retirement. After that, I moved back to Iowa to take care of my aging mother, and also ended up on the Iowa Department of Natural Resources Commission for another 21 years. I was nominated by 4 different governors, I think, and my memory is serving correctly. And I finally left at the end because my wife was so ill, and our current governor decided I'd been on long enough and didn't need to continue.
Well, listen, Kim, without further ado, let's jump into the book, man. Flying Fisheries biologist. Tell us a little bit more about it.
Well, it starts out explaining my lifelong fascination with airplanes. My first airplane flight, it was actually in a Ford trimotor at the Antique and Holden built airplane show in Ottumwa, Iowa, and that was quite the experience. My instructors were always surprised when they saw that was my first flight, because flying in a Ford trimotor is a rare occurrence.
Mm-hmm.
I went all the usual model routes, and finally, while I was in high school, started taking flying lessons. I finished my flying lessons in Alaska, and one of the things that most people don't know about fisheries biology in Alaska in particular is because of the large area. Alaska is equal to about half of the United States, continental United States. And my area was the size of, that I was in charge of, was the size of Indiana. It's very difficult to not fly and cover the area, since there aren't any roads, and you've got a choice of going by boat or snow machine or airplane, depending on the season.
Mm-hmm.
We counted salmon escapement. That's the number of fish that escape from the commercial fishery, and that's a vital piece of information to know, since you're trying to make sure there's continuing run and enough fish for a commercial fishery and subsistence fishery every year after, from the airplanes. That was quite a learning experience in itself. You're flying at about 800 feet, and if something goes wrong with the airplane, the pilot and you don't have very long to prepare for contact with the ground. And so that was why we had the 20-year retirement again. We also flew herring surveys and determined herring biomass from airplanes by measuring the surface area of the school with a funny little plastic tube that had a calibrated symbol in it. And sometimes when it was a really big herring school, you had to uh, start your stopwatch and use the airplane speed and the distance that you covered on the stopwatch to get the length of the school while you got the breadth of the school with the herring tube.
People, listen, I'm not that much of an adventure seeker. Okay, so I prefer staying right here on the ground. But for all of you out there that are wanting to embark upon this adventure, you know where you gotta go, man. Head on over to Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Most importantly, check out his personal website, kimfrancisco.online. Purchase this book, embark upon the journey, and remember, there are 2 other titles that you're gonna wanna get acquainted with as well. Head on over there and grab your copies today. You know, Kim, what I find fascinating about your book, man, is it perfectly sits at an intersection, right? The precision of a biologist and the freedom of a pilot in completely different areas, yet work in such a cohesive manner there in Alaska. So, I'm curious, man, how does that relationship shift throughout the book?
Well, most of the time, I should say all of the time, there was a pilot actually flying the plane, even though I was a pilot. I used my pilot skills mainly to help me choose my pilots so that they were safe. But the pilot was responsible for flying the airplane, and I was responsible for the counting and measuring work. I remember one of my favorite pilots, we landed one day and he said, you know, I've been flying with you now for, he rattled off a number of hours that we'd been flying together. And he says, I've never seen a salmon. And I looked at him and said, well, and that's why I fly with you. Because your job's to fly the airplane, mine's to be the salmon. I only ever knew one pilot who could both fly and count. That was our pilot in Ketchikan, Dick Hamlin. And he was a rather amazing man, but he preferred to have an observer rather than have to do both jobs himself.
You know, Kim, thank you, man. Listen, you said something interesting earlier to me, and you were saying how your book is not for pilots, and it's not for, it's for pilots, it's for non-pilots, and basically saying that the book is for everyone, and that everyone is going to be able to find something in it, some type of entertainment within it. And listen, I don't doubt that for a second, right? I do believe that that is the case. So now I want to hone it in there for a second, okay? Listen, for the non-pilot, right? For the everyday person who picks up your book, what do you hope that they take from it?
Well, several things. For the non-pilots, I do describe some things that only pilots would be familiar with, but I think since most of us end up flying commercial or something nowadays, I think maybe it's good background information, and I tried to write it for so non-pilots would understand, but explaining how serious accidents can happen. For example, one of the things people run into is what's called the accelerated stall. And that's not the engine stalling, that's the airplane's wing stops flying because it reaches an angle of attack that no longer lets it fly. And that's a common misunderstanding people have when they hear pilots talking, is when they hear stall, they think it means the engine quit. Well, it's not at all what it means. And so I'm hoping non-pilots will learn a little bit about what the pilot is doing up there when they're being transported around. From a fisheries standpoint, I'm hoping that people will learn what was required of us to get the information to manage the commercial fisheries successfully. Alaska has the distinction of being one of the few areas that is producing more salmon now than it did when commercial fisheries first started there, because the biologists have learned how, from their previous predecessors, how to manage the fisheries. And so I hope that's something that non-biologists and pilots will learn from the book.
Kim, final question here for you, man. Let's make it a reflective one. Okay, now that the book has been written, looking back at all of the years that you've invested in this career, is there a particular story or adventure within it that you find yourself thinking about more than others these days?
Excuse me. Kind of depends on the situation. My wife of 50 years recently passed away. I'm sorry. I may not be able to tell this story. But once when she knew I was out flying surveys, I forgot to call her as soon as I got home and could tell her I was safely on the ground. I sort of came into the house quietly and found her in the living room crying because she thought I was overdue. And so I guess that's one of the stories I happen to think of, at least when I get sad about her loss. Some of the more happy moments, because we had the humorous moments of flying, though also dangerous, but it was funny afterwards. But one time we were bringing back a herring sample, and we put them in big plastic garbage bags, and they're kind of like water when they're that way. And as the airplane was taking off, the bag came loose and started sliding back into the tail of the airplane, which was making the pilot lose control of the airplane. And because the weight and balance was becoming tail heavy, and I had to grab the bag by the corner, and the weight of the bag caused the bag to rip. And anyway, a bunch of herring juice ended up on the floor of the airplane. I was able to grab the airplane. The other biologist who was with me had to reach over his seat and grab me to keep me from sliding into the tail of the airplane. And a year or so later, I was flying with the same flying service, and the owner happened to be flying me that day, was my pilot. And when I was loading things into the airplane, I noticed there was a hole in the floor. And he said, yeah, that's where that herring slime spilled, and we couldn't get the smell out of the plane until we were flying some batteries in for one of the miners. and the batteries spilled on the floor, and they ate that piece of floor out. And he says, we haven't repaired it yet. But they had to use battery acid to get rid of the herring smell. That was kind of funny. But
you know, Kim, listen, man, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for a multitude of things, man. I want to thank you first and foremost for all of the information that you've provided, but also I want to thank you for taking the opportunity and allowing yourself to be so vulnerable with us, right? Like the vulnerability that you just showcased. And listen, man, here's the reason. Like you were talking about this deep connection that you had to your late wife, but it's something that is so beautifully raw, beautifully human, and something that everybody listening in, everybody watching right now can instantly relate to. Your book carries a powerful reminder of a number of things, right? I mean, listen, obviously it's great insight to Alaska. It's great insight to nature, it's a flying, but it is also something that, at least for me, offers a powerful message about perspective. Listen, man, we spend our whole lives trying to get higher, but sometimes the real view comes from flying low. A powerful reminder for all of us to really appreciate the moments, to really focus on the connections that we've established, whether that's with pilots that we've come across, whether that's with significant others. I think that's a powerful message to close out on. So people, remember, it's Amazon, it's Barnes & Noble, it's kimfrancisco.online. Remember, Flying Fisheries, biologist, that was the anchor for today, but there are other titles that you're going to want to get out. You're going to want to get your hands on. You're going to want to check out. You got to head on over there to do just that. Pick up your copies today. Kim, listen, man, this has been an absolute honor. I really do mean that. Such a pleasure speaking with you. Keep up the fantastic work. And once again, thank you for being a guest on People of Distinction.
thank you for having me.